We're talking about softness in this world where often what gets rewarded is competitiveness, speed, aggression, especially in a place like Mumbai, or honestly everywhere, right? I think talking about empathy, talking about patience, talking about using connections, and talking about listening, all these softer skills and how we can use them as a powerful tool to lead and to create and to connect with each other. I think that's what we are going to try and talk about today. I know we are going to take audience questions in the end, but I'm going to do like quick rapid fire because I want to know when you all are here in great numbers, and I'm very happy to see that there are so many of you who are interested in this. I wanted to know when you came here today, what was that one thing that you all thought you all are going to be listening or talking about? Like when you hear softness, what's the one word that comes to your mind? Quickly.
That's empathy.
Trying to find peace in this.
Kindness, empathy, peace,
Anti-hustle.
anti-hustle, lovely, yeah, hustle. Anybody? Bana?
I've got a long answer to this.
Okay, I'll come to you later then. I'm going to ask the panelists. Yeah. Paridhi, one word.
Empathy would be the word for me.
I think for me it would be security.
Interesting, yeah.
Quiet, silent.
Quiet silence. That's nice. Okay, before we start off, just to give a slight background about myself and why I thought softness was something that I really wanted to talk about. I come from a very modest, middle class, joint family. You can imagine I grew up in in an environment where compromise was just the norm, right? And all through school and college life, it was very easy to excel at what you're doing because you put your head down and you study and you do well, and you work hard, you do well, you go ahead. I was very happy, I did well, I graduated with honors, I then go out in the world and decide to work, and I realize, okay, this is not good enough. Obviously, I'm really struggling, and this is not enough. And I'm not sure if you'll tell, but I'm not going to talk about my age and how many years ago that was, but that was a really long time ago. And that time, there were not so many options. There was definitely no internet, so there was no guidance as to what I'm supposed to do. There were no career counselors. So everybody that time, like MBA was the next big thing, right? So like, okay, fine, I'm going to do MBA. So I got into a management school, one of the top ones, and okay, that was when it hit me, right? I'm this really quiet person who doesn't want to be competitive, doesn't want to be out there, and trying to stand out, especially in a management school or maybe any of these engineering schools, any of your top Ivy League schools is definitely very challenging. So I did it. I hustled. I struggled. I was aggressive. I did whatever I could. I got into one of the top MNCs. I worked my butt off for like 8 years in a bank. And all along, I kept feeling like this is not my calling and this is not what I wanted to do. And I think somewhere, around 8 years later, when I was doing very well, I was very successful. I was doing, like, everybody was very proud of me. Parents are proud of me. In-laws are proud of me. And I decided, no, this is it. I want to quit. And that was where my first softness came in, because I think when I did that, the first thing everybody, when you take such a step, the first thing that comes to the opposition, criticism, everybody is like, what is wrong with you? Like, how could you do something like that? This is like the best thing that has happened to you. And I said, no, I just can't do it anymore. I want to look up. I was burning out. And the burnout was not only because it was like a lot of hard work or something, it was just me trying to fit into an environment that was just not me. And I was not able to push somebody else down to climb up. And I said, fine, if this is not for me, I'm going to find another space and another environment, another world maybe, where I can survive and thrive. And that's how I decided to just stop and breathe and look after myself first. So a lot of things happened. I went through a lot of journeys. I That was around the time I had my two kids, so I became very obsessed with early childcare education. I did a lot of research on that, so much so that I became an early child educator. I became a counselor. I worked in that field for a while because it was easy. It was freelancing. I did very well there as well. And gradually I decided, let me figure out now. I had enough time what I really wanted to do. And what I really wanted to do is go back to my roots. I come from a family who are into manufacturing musical instruments. We have a factory in Mumbai, we have a store in town. And while I was going through all this, I think the only thing I was trying to prove to myself is that I can do it without anybody else's support. I don't want to be, this is a business family, easy to fall back on. I wanted to just do something on my own before I finally realized that, no, this is what I wanted to do was really go back to my roots, take over the business. And I think that's where I am now finding my home and my peace. And I love it. I mean, while we speak, I'm sure a lot of points will come across as how I feel in this current environment and in what I do. Other than, of course, having a full day job, I also curate events. I curate musical events. I curate a festival, a community festival in Bandra. So in all this space, I am able to be myself. I'm able to use my skills of, empathy, be it softness, be it just a person who is okay to be vulnerable and still strong. I think I have just found the right space and evolved with a very long journey, through a long journey, but I think I have finally reached my destination. But yeah, there's still a long journey ahead. And I think I'm going to start with Akhil right here, because when we were sitting in the room and we were chatting, he had a very interesting topic because as you all heard about his background, he writes a lot about LGBTQ rights, and he's an author, he's a poet, and he has been in Delhi, stayed in Delhi, and that's where he started his journey. So in a place like Delhi, how he survived, I think he wanted to speak more about that.
Thanks a lot for having me over here. Can we have a small round of applause for what an ambassador with so understanding softness, of coming to softness in a very experientially detailed, rigorous way. Thank you for that. In fact, I was planning to say something else, but taking on from what you said, I teach literature, I teach poetry primarily in different schools. I right now teach in Pitt's Law School in Kalyan. I teach literature to law students, and I was just looking back when you were saying about, what does it mean to be successful in an engineering school, in an Ivy League school, and I've taught poetry or literature to management students, to civil engineering students, to mechanical engineering students, and now to law students, apart from, of course, literature, humanities students. And, sometimes you think of it, oh, this is they want a holistic personality, so, some garnishing of humanities courses should be there, they should do 2 literature courses, they'll know when to drop a Shakespeare quote, and that's all it's useful for. But over the years, I've realized, no, that's what's keeping them alive. That's what's giving them a sense of themselves. That's what giving them a worldview, which is not just about competing with each other and getting the best rank. And because so many of them come to the literature classroom with such weight on their shoulders and parental expectations, and every third sentence brings them to the verge of tears, sometimes in office hours. And you're like, what's happening? And the literature classroom sometimes is quasi-therapy, which sometimes you don't feel equipped for. But I do think there's one way in which we think of counseling and therapy through certain clinics, and that infrastructure is deeply, deeply important. But I think just spaces where you can think open-ended manner, spaces where you don't necessarily have to get something out of it by the time the discussion is ended, the spaces where the idea of discussion is that not that one-upmanship or I win at the end. I think those spaces are so crucial, and that literature classroom, that poetry classroom sort of becomes a space for that. The thing about Delhi, because I'm fairly new to Bombay, and I live in Meera Road, which is just above Dahisar, where you do. And it's only been a year, but maybe I'll end with this. I used to live in Delhi, which is not known to be soft, not known to be polite, not. It's fairly aggressive. It's fairly rough and tumble. It's fairly the weather doesn't help. You have like skin burning summer, bone chilling winter, and you have and during Diwali, you open the window and there's a black cloud comes in. So I was just wondering how to make it inhabitable. I'll give you an example of a small poem. I mean, a bunch of you will get these references easily. Several of you would have been to Delhi as well. So I was thinking about how to make otherwise this tough city inhabitable, soft, amenable, receptive. He was as arrogant as a Chhatarpur farmhouse. I was thinking about the guy I was with then. He was as arrogant as a Chhatarpur farmhouse, but in the end, I figured he was just cluttered like achini, which I liked. Our beginnings were rocky. We held hands infrequently and uneasily, like Defcon and Kotla. But then, in some years, often and more breezily, like Jangpura and Jangpura Extension. All those years of romance and apprehension, he'd held me in his Najafgarh arms and kissed me like Shalimar Bagh. Not that we didn't fight like Rajouri, crossing each other's civil lines, not that he wasn't at times distant like Greater Noida or quiet like Asola. But always, when the worst had passed, we returned at last to where we'd been, somewhere near Dilshad Garden, by the blessings of Nizamuddin. So, and I'm just thinking, what does, I think what poetry of the kind which is, what is poetry? It's something which is attentive to feelings. I think it gives you another map to live in the same city. God knows we need it in this city as well. So hopefully this conversation will give us some of those footsteps into that world.
I'm sure it will. I think I'm going to ask Paridhi. You are a fairly successful person in a world that is very testosterone driven, right? I mean, yeah, you all do know, right? Like, she is a bodybuilder, like, she's a fitness coach. And again, we were discussing it's an extremely saturated market, and she has managed to get there. Like, I'm very impressed, because after she told me Paridhi is a part of the, I was like going through your Insta page, and I'm like, wow, everything was like, wow. And I really wanted to know, because what I also noticed is that, in spite of everything, you are this person who is very soft spoken, who's, I don't, there's no aggression that comes across in any manner. So how do you survive in this environment? And do you have anything to share in terms of how softness has defined you?
Firstly, thank you for being so kind with that introduction. I really appreciate that. But I think a lot of my coaching sort of also stems from how I grew up. I might be like a coach today, but I've been an athlete pretty much 15 years of my life. So anybody who's been an athlete or been in any sort of sports pretty much knows that no matter what your age, it's tough love. Start to end. It does not matter how you're feeling, what you're doing, how you show up. It's pretty much like, okay, you're in the field, suck it up and do it. So as much as that did pay off for me all the years growing up, I had a notion of what I didn't want to be. Cut to that, at all points of time in our life, like, we've left the things that we love to play or be at in terms of sports or otherwise, got into the academic rat race, got into a really good B school as well, only to see every single one of my classmates break down. And we were just 60 of us. Imagine across 3 years, even somebody who loves academics, who loves to study, just broke down because the pressure of excelling and being in that environment was so tough, not only from your peers, because now you're amongst 60 of the smartest minds in the country, but then there are also the expectations of your parents. And sports and fitness being such a big part of my life, it of course gave me all those things where it's dedication, resilience, community. But it also helped me through all of this. It just literally kept me together because outside of that academic circle, I had this one place to go and to be and to exist, and nobody was expecting anything out of me in that circle. So it became such a cornerstone of sanity for me that as I showed up, I was accepted as who I was. It wasn't recommended for me to be like, oh, please come first, oh, please hit this, please do that. Just come up, show up, and be who you are and do whatever you want to do for that hour. So I think that acceptance, that sense of belonging became so important to me that as we reached our second year, I just simply asked myself, do I really want to be a part of this rat race? Or do I want to create a space for people to come and to just be? And I think that's pretty much how a lot of my coaching sort of works. It's just you come and you be. And we see how you show up on that day. And we just coach from there on. It's not like I'm going to expect you to please do this for me today. It's not for me. It's for them and how they show up on that day. So yeah, that's pretty much like how empathy sort of became like a big cornerstone for me in terms of coaching people in general. And also it's such a male dominated industry, as you've said. It doesn't favor I don't feel nice today. Like, I don't think anybody sort of even thinks about feelings affecting what you can or cannot do, because that's not even a conversation we have these days.
Yeah.
But that literally drives your energy, that drives how cognizant you are in that hour, and that could actually like lead to injuries or not lead to injuries. And those are not even conversations we sort of have, right? Toughness, constant output, that's what we're looking at when it comes to being in that 1 hour in that space. So softness for me became almost like, okay, I don't want to be a part of this culture that's just hustle oriented. I want people to come in and have a space to literally just be and work with that, rather than wanting them to be something on that particular day as they show up, because they're not really showing up for me, they're showing up for themselves. So it almost also became like an act of resistance. Like, no. Like, if you don't want to do it, we don't do it. And I think for me, that sort of became like super important, where it's just conversation oriented. And results come along the way because they're actually bought into the process and they feel like there's a space for them to belong.
It just become a byproduct of
It
what
just
you-
becomes a byproduct of that process rather than it just being so result oriented. Something that I actually drove away from when I decided to do this as a career. Like it can't be that. And yes, of course, there's merit to grit, there's merit to that perseverance, 100%. But there's also merit to backing off when you need to back off and not having to just take it onto your head and be like, okay, gotta do this. Like, suck it up. Oh, I don't think that's like a good strategy at all in a space like that.
Thank you so much, Paridhi. Nishra, coming to you, yoga guru, right? Like, I think people look at somebody who is into yoga as somebody who's going to be very dominant, like somebody who you are looking up to listen to. Again, have you faced any issues or any challenges as to, the same thing that we were discussing, when we struggle in this whole rat race to get up there and to be noticed? Have you faced any challenges in your career? And have you used softness and successfully so, and you would like to share with us?
I don't think I've ever been criticized for softness in the space that I come, But to take you back a little before yoga ever came into my life, like Paridhi was telling you about her background and how one thing led to another. Similarly, I was not set out to always do yoga. That's not how I started off. I could have never imagined that I'm doing what I'm doing today. Because I studied media, I majored in advertising. It was absolutely different from where I am today. And so I was very much, I got like the best college placement, I scored well, etc. So I was set out to take up on a field of media marketing, which is exactly the opposite of softness. And hustling and trying to prove something and achieving was what we were built on. That's how my college education was, people around me were. And soon as I started working, I realized that one thing is to like your curriculum and your subjects versus one thing is to actually be in the real world and working in that field. So they're entirely different things. So I started realizing, okay, I studied for this, I prepped for this, and now when I'm working in the same sort of a company, I do not actually like what I'm doing. And it actually led to 3 jobs that I quit back to back, for me to realize that what am I trying to fight against? Just because there are people around me who are trying to put up with a good CV and everyone tells you that, okay, you have to be put in this company for a while, so that your CV looks nice, even if I actually don't like it. And my reasons for not liking would be very different from, say, just about anything else. Say, for example, the last job that I left, one of the most important reasons that I left was I hated the fact that I couldn't see daylight. I'd go at a certain time to the company and I'd leave at night, and it would just be so disorienting in the mind that what am I doing?
That's how I felt when I was working for the bank.
Absolutely right. And you are applauded if you have stayed overnight to finish the presentation to please the client, and that's set as a standard and a benchmark to what it is to be a good employee, so that you are next in line for appraisal. And that's just something I could not resonate with. But I still tried. I tried to go against my inner gut, but I tried to keep up with that, only to realize that I soon reached a burnout, like she's talking about. I soon reached a burnout, and thankfully so my threshold broke much sooner. Thankfully so I chose not to go on for too long. And when I decided to quit, I simply quit to quit. Not because there was a plan B, not because there was something waiting for me. I simply wanted to be home to cry and sulk all by myself, so that I have the space in my head to understand what I'm being called towards. How can I know where I want to be, going, or what's my calling if I don't have the space? If I'm going to be hounded by my boss's emails and calls day and night, I'm never going to have the space. So I think the ability to trust the flow, to trust the process and find your inner intuition guiding you is very important in embracing softness.
Yes.
For me to get to that point, for me to be able to understand where am I headed, I had to drop the resistance. I had to just allow myself to be, and it's okay to quit even if I don't have a solid reason to. And I feel as a result of which, I was able to embrace many things that led me to yoga, and I'm so happy. And it's actually taught me about life more than what I ever knew in the growing up years of school and college. But I see that softness, as we talk about this as a conversation today, as a strategy, I don't know how it can be a strategy, because it's probably an untapped potential in every person. For me, it would have stemmed from a deep space of security. So over a period of time, when you start to realize that you are exactly where you're meant to be, and there's a deep sense of security that awakens, you naturally end up being soft, because you don't have anything to prove or anyone to prove. You can allow yourself to just be where you are, and that sense of softness can exude from you. So you don't have to try and chase. You don't have to try and rush and run after something. You can allow yourself to just be where you are and allow things to come to you. That's how I see softness. I just see it as being that sense of deep security which radiates from you, and ease is flowing through you, as a result of which things flow. You don't have to push for something.
Yeah, I totally understand, because even if I relate to that very well, because as a person who's into business, when I'm meeting a customer today, I realize I have come to an understanding that the more transparent you are, right, and the more natural you are, the minute you try to listen and connect, because like you say, you come from an advertising marketing background. Even I'm like an MBA in marketing, but very opposed to what we were taught, like in terms of, pushing, making yourself seen and heard. Instead, listening and actually, paying attention to what it is that the other person needs, even as today, when I'm talking to clients, when I'm listening to them, I actually am extremely frank. Like if I'll give you an example. There was a person once who came to me and said that I want to buy a tabla for a 2-year-old boy. And I looked at her and I said, like, he's 2 year old. He's not going to, he's not going to be able to play for a long time. I said, you can, start with small drums, this, that, but tabla is, and she wanted like one of the best, okay, best, very expensive investment for a child. And I asked her, like, do you have any background, family has any background in music? No, nothing. So I said, like, do you have, are you sure that, you don't even know if he'll be interested in this instrument tomorrow? You're going to make such a big investment and then he might not be interested in that in it anymore. She's like, no, I'm sure I want it. So I was very frank with her. I said, listen, 2-year-old can't manage to play a tabla. By your fingers and your wrists and arms need to be developed enough. So around 6 to 7 years is when he will be able to do any justice to play or starting to play. After which it's going to be a rigorous journey and you won't know now whether he's going to be interested. So she's like, what do you suggest? So I said, just take some small. This was a while ago. And I'm not kidding you. She's one of my staunch supporters and customers. Since then, she's been coming. The child thankfully took to music, has picked up a guitar, has picked up a piano. He plays very well, and very recently she came back to buy that tabla finally. And this time I didn't stop. And I actually spoke to the child. I'm like, you know what? Like 5 years back, your grandmother wanted to buy a tabla for you, and I was the one who said, no, are you sure you want to play? And he's like, yes, I want to play. And she comes very often, she comes back and she's like, the only reason I come to you is because I feel you tell me as it is. You don't try to sell, you don't try to push. You're a weird shopkeeper. Every other shop I go to will be trying to sell me the most expensive thing there. But I actually appreciate and I respect the fact that you understand me, what I need, what my family needs, and you are trying to, make sure that, I am getting the best. So I think I felt like my empathy and my soft skills there were definitely a place of power and a place where I was able to use it very effectively, like you said, right? Like, so it's really great. Akhil, when you're writing, also, have you ever, written about, using softer skills as power, and as have you ever spoken about this, especially because you're such a supporter of the queer community? Have you been speaking about this?
Before that, what's the name of the shop? I'm now very curious.
Hariva Vishwanath.
Okay. So the thing about I was looking in fact around the room, and I'm possibly the oldest person in the room. And I was just thinking about those early years, and one of the labels that in those years one was very proud to hold was activist, and these were 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. So this is before the Delhi High Court had read down Section 377 and decriminalized queer folks. Then the Supreme Court recriminalized queer folks in 2013. And then in 2018, the Supreme Court decriminalized queer folks. So one has seen through that arc. But I was thinking of those student years, and there was a sort of, not aggression, but some kind of pride, even perhaps some kind of machismo in sort of thinking of yourself as an activist and being part of marches, being part of protests, being part of thinking almost like a slogan.
I think it goes hand in hand with aggression, activism, almost.
Also necessary, but there's a certain form it asks of you, a certain publicness it asks of you, a certain interventionist kind of persona it asks of you. And around those years, I was thinking that, that mode, as important as it is, what does it leave out? One of my friends, Gautam Bhan, a lovely urban studies scholar, queer person, queer activist, he said something very evocative in those years. I think his mother had told him that slogans do not have footnotes. And what is it when you go to the footnotes, what would happen? And sorry, I have a poem for every answer. So I'm just going to read, and this was written before the Delhi High Court judgment, right? So before the High Court had read down Section 377, which, I mean, just to jog our memories, it's this the 1861 Indian Penal Code says whoever has carnal intercourse against the order of nature, and basically that's everything mostly. So I thought, how can you come at it when you're not in an activist space? So the poem that I wrote was, I want to 377 you so bad. I want to 377 you so bad till even the sheets hurt. I want to ache your knees, singe your skin, line you brown, breathe you in. I want to mouth you in words, neck you in red. I want to beg your body insane into sepals. I want to 377 you like a star falling off the brow. I want to feel you till my nails turn water. I want to suck you 7 different skies. I want to be a squatter in your head when it sleeps, when it's dark. I want to break laws with you in bed and in streets and in parks. And then I was very unhappy when the High Court read it down because it became irrelevant. But I think it allowed me a sense of joy, humor, softness, which was a complement to the more kind of public, interventionist, angrier persona. I think both are important.
Yes.
And they both need to be in tandem with each other. And just one minor thing before I stop. I was also when we got this rubric of softness and what you think of softness. It's also a little bit of I think it's a little bit of a privilege as well to reach a space where you can enjoy softness. I mean, I'm thinking of Dalit poets like Meena Kandasamy or Sukita Rani, and there's a lot of premium which is actually given to Anglo, which is given to. There's a wonderful Sukita Rani poem which the title is "I Speak Up Bluntly."